Hello, everyone. I'm Conor Grady.
I'm Nikolas Reardon.
And I'm Sanches.
And today we are going to be working on Walt Whitman. He's the one that we chose for our poetry presentation, and the three poems that we're doing from him are going to be Kosmos, Come Said My Soul, and I Hear America Sing. Walt Whitman was mainly known for being an American poet, most famed for being the father of American poetry as well as free verse.
Walt Whitman was born in Brooklyn, New York on May 31st, 1819. He left school at the age of 14 to become a journeyman printer. He was uneducated bringing up, and his love for reading and writing began very early on, in a printer's shop. Whitman was largely self-taught. After the printer, he had various jobs, such as a teacher, a journalist, an editor, in order to support his writing. He published his first edition of Leaves of Grass in 1855. Whitman was in his 40s when the Civil War started, so he was not able to be a soldier. Also, there were various accounts that he did not believe in violence. In 1862, Whitman read in a paper that his brother was injured in the Civil War. He traveled to D.C. to help him, and he spent the rest of the war helping the soldiers by giving them candies, books, papers, and got businesses to donate items so he could help the soldiers. After the war, he worked for various government agencies and continued to publish new editions of Leaves of Grass. He suffered from a stroke in 1873 and moved to Cayman, New Jersey, and continued to revise Leaves of Grass. He died on March 26, 1892, in Cayman, New Jersey, to pleurisy, which is an inflammation of the lung tissue and the chest cavity.
This is the video we chose to illustrate the life of Walt Whitman in his early years.
Alright, now I'm going to be talking about the terminology that is mainly associated with Walt Whitman. So the first one at the top is going to be free verse. Free verse is basically a poem that doesn't rhyme or have any standard meter or rhythm to it, really. It breaks iambic pentameter on purpose to either get a point across or to be less flowery in your presentation of that poem. Walt Whitman popularized this form of writing, and even to this day is considered the father of free verse in American poetry. He inspired poets like Ezra Pound, Emily Dickinson, and E. E. Cummings. Now, the second one that we also have here is realism. Realism was an art and poetry movement that happened around the mid-1800s. Realism was defined by the mundane lives of the working class and the poor. We're specifically, though, looking at the poetry side of this movement, which had similar themes to the art movement. It was a rejection of romanticism that came before it, which included works like William Blake, Lord Byron, and Mary Shelley, the girl who wrote Frankenstein. Third one that we have is transcendentalism. Now, it's a long word, but it basically means it was an American-born movement that happened in the 1820s, 1830s that was a return to kind of romantic ideals. It was defined by the belief that the divine influenced all of nature and humanity. This movement was also defined by one of the first major pushes of feminism and other social worries of the time. Next, we have deism, and this is kind of a religious idea that Walt Whitman subscribed to. It was a way to explain why God or higher level entities or whatever would let evil persist in the world. Deism believes that there is a supremely powerful being, in this case would be like a god, that created the world and set it in motion, but it doesn't interfere with the existing world. This idea of God was created in the early to mid 1700s and was a main way why, effectively, that they explained how an all-good God could allow evil and catastrophe on Earth. Now, for his journalism, Whitman spent much of his young life as one. Journalism encouraged a straight-to-the-point writing style, and this was likely attributes to Whitman's prolific use of free verse and his very straightforward kind of presentation to it. And finally, his stance on abolition was interesting. It was wishy-washy at times, but also secure. he believed in individual rights and freedoms above everything else and in the American dream, but he never really commented on slavery and never really made an active like push for or against it.
Alright, Leaves of Grass is a book that is comprised of a group of poems that Whitman wrote throughout his life. There are many editions, and there is not an exact number because people have different ideas and opinions on what makes a new edition. However, everyone agrees that there are 7 to 9 editions made. And so the edition is like he wrote the book first, and then he continued to edit and publish new versions of it throughout his life. And our 4 most important ones are the first edition, published in 1855, because that's the one where he started everything, and without this one, there would be no new editions. We chose the third edition that was posted in 1860 because there are 122 new poems that were added to this edition. We chose the Drum Taps edition that was published in 1865. Means he wrote this after the Civil War and it brought new perspectives to him. He brought way more poems into it, more American poems into it. Very important. And our final edition that we thought was the most important is the Deathbed edition, and that was published in 1891. This is the last edition he wrote before he died, and his first poem in this edition was "Come Said My Soul," which is a poem we later talk about. And this poem sets a tone that he was ready to die and was welcoming it in his later life.
This is going to be our first poem. It is Kosmos by Walt Whitman. Who includes diversity and is nature, who is the amplitude of the earth, and the coarseness and sexuality of the earth, and the great charity of the earth, and the equilibrium also. Who has not looked forth from the windows the eyes for nothing, or whose brain held audience with messengers for nothing. Who contains believers and disbelievers, who is the most majestic lover? Who holds duly his or her triune proportion of realism, spiritualism, and of the aesthetic or intellectual, who, having considered the body, finds all its organs and parts good, who, out of the theory of the earth and of his or her body, understands by subtle analogies all other theories, the theory of a city, a poem, and of the large politics of these states, who believes not only in our globe with its sun and moon, but in other globes with their suns and moons, who, constructing the house of himself or herself, not for a day, but for all time, sees races, eras, dates, generations, the past, the future, dwelling there like space, inseparable, together. So, for Cosmos, what I mainly gained from it was, well, first off, this was in his first ever draft of Leaves of Grass. So this was written in his younger years compared to the next couple poems that you're going to be listening to. Its message was very spiritual and it's very overarching. It has a lot of these kind of larger than life ideas and a mix of kind of a beautiful interpretation of spiritualism and also a very negative one. The next is going to be mainly about how he, in the poem and himself, was very pro-immigration kind of early on. And a lot of this talks about that, specifically when it's talking about a globe and constructing houses and bringing in generations of all times, all races, etc. It's about the working class as well, talking about the large politics of the states and talking about how people coming together makes the past and even the future better. And the last part of it, which is a little harder to kind of suss out, was the idea that this was about industrialization. Mainly the idea of it talks about nature and how kind of beautiful and how equal it normally is. But looking through windows, you find nothing. The brain itself, when it's kind of controlled by industrialization, is a messenger for nothing. The idea is industrialization falters spiritualism itself with believers and non-believers. It's mainly just a kind of whole idea on his take on what he was seeing, because at his time, industrialization was a very new thing. Many people had never really even seen something like that before, and he put his thoughts into words.
So this is the second poem, I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his at its should be built and strong. The carpenter sings his as he measures his planks and beam. The mason sings his he makes ready for work or leaves off work. Boatman sings what belongs to him in his boat. The deckman singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song, the plug boy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing. Each singing what belongs to him or her and to no one else. The day what belongs to the day. At night the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. This is part of the third edition. This poem mostly focuses on the working class, giving different job descriptions, such as carpenters, masons, and boatmen. It also talks about throughout the whole time of the day, and it has a lottery tone to it, like happy and praising tone.
This is our third poem called Come Said My Soul by Walt Whitman. Come said my soul, such verses for my body let us write, for we are one, that should I after death invisibly return, or long, long hence, in other spheres, there to some group of mates the chance resuming, tallying earth's soil, trees, winds, tumultuous waves, ever with pleased smiles I may keep on, ever and ever, yet the verses owning as first I here and now, signing for soul and body, set to them my name, Walt Whitman. So this is the first poem in the final edition. This set the rest of the edition up for, like, he's about to die. He's ready for him to pass on and have new experiences in the afterlife. He's very compliant with it. He's not fighting it. He's not like scared of it. He's ready to go. You can see this when he says that should I after death invisibly return. He's ready for new experiences, and I don't know when he says that. I don't know if he's meaning as a ghost or like as a spirit or as like reincarnation. He might believe. It's very spiritual. He's always talking about like he's talking about nature and the soul. He's talking about how the soul and the body are different. And he's always capitalized body and soul. It's always capitalized. He's never, I think it's got very big importance to him.
Hello, everyone. Now we're going to kind of do a bit of comparison of these poems. So, guys, how did you feel about these?
I felt they were all very, like, I like how they're lined up. I believe in all these, that they all had them, or in some sort of way.
Okay.
Although they're all structurally different, but they all come back in a similar theme.
Yeah, so I guess starting from the top, we'll go with the one that I did, Cosmos. At least for me, I got mainly a lot of. He's definitely very spiritual. I mean, I'd say through all of them, there's definitely some degree of that. Um, at least early on, it definitely seemed like he was very, kind of, very open in a lot of ways. It doesn't seem like he's as open in later years, but he's a lot more accepting of things, I'd say.
I didn't really see the spirituality in uh, I Hear America Singing, but I really saw it in Come Set My Soul. So did you see it in spirit? In
A bit. Not as much though. I definitely think that when it comes to like the spirituality, the ones that are the strongest in that would definitely be Cosmos and then Come Set My Soul.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I Hear America Singing is more of his like opinion on how he viewed America and society at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Because that's very similar to how Cosmos is. Because Cosmos is very kind of pro-immigration about like being like, hey, this is the world. Everyone should be. He's very like, yeah, this is America. Come on in.
Yeah.
Especially because he lived during the Gilded Age, which was an age in American history where a lot of immigration from because of like the Irish potato famine was happening at that time and things like that. So a lot of these groups were coming here, and he seemed to subscribe to that idea a lot.
Yeah, you can really see the progression of views too. Like, especially in Come Set My Soul, because he was about to die, and you could just see in the writing that he was welcoming it. He wasn't fighting it. He was just ready.
You can also tell with his earlier poems seem a lot longer compared to what he does near the end. Near the end, it's very short and pretty like to the point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
His original writing, at least like when he initially started, is a lot more like esoteric and kind of long-winded, whereas his other stuff later, so like Come Set My Soul as well as I Hear America Singing, are far shorter.
Yeah, I can see what you're talking about. It's kind of weird how like Cosmos is the longest, I Hear America Singing is the middle, and then Come Set My Soul is the shortest. You can really see it's pretty substantial.
And they all revolve around like the working class, and throughout all three poems you can actually see that.
Yeah,
Especially through Cosmos and I Hear America Singing, you can see it a lot stronger than in Comes in My Soul, but you can still get the idea that he's in it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think those are pretty good comparisons, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move on to the next one. So some of these definitely have some contrasts. So we can go from the top again and just kind of see. So at least one of the things that I definitely noticed, and this is very obvious, was just these are in very different stages of his life.
Yeah, the first Cosmos is written in his first edition. I don't remember what number it came in order of all the other poems, but it was in the first edition. I Hear America Singing, that was in the third edition with the other 122 new edition poems written into it. And then Come Set My Soul was written before he died. So that's three huge different points in his life.
I mean, he did this over decades, so I mean, you can definitely tell the change in his style is very, very prominent. I'd also say that when it comes to his intent for these, they've definitely been different. The one Cosmos at the top, its intent is almost like a subtle warning about industrial progress and things like that.
I think his intent in I Hear America Singing is more of just giving his opinion and how he views America and the working class in America at the time.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that, Angel. I think it was very blunt on the working class in America. I think that's what it was mainly focused on. And then, and Come Set My Soul, his intent was to show that he is ready to move on, ready to have see the afterlife, or if there is one, ready to see what the new journey after life.
You can definitely tell that there was a style shift as well going through. At the beginning of his life, it's very, as I said before, not freeform, but very esoteric and kind of long-winded. Whereas the farther down and the older that he gets, the more concentrated that his style becomes. Because at around those times is when he really starts pushing for free verse. And you really get to see that and kind of understand that there was a very gradual change in his style over time.
This can be really seen. Like comparing Cosmos to Come Set My Soul. Cosmos is double the length of Come Set My Soul. Come Set My Soul was very, very short, to the point, and it didn't waste a whole lot. It was very precise.
And you could tell the tone was different throughout all three. Throughout going back to the different stages of his life, it also affected the tone in each poem.
Yeah, because for Cosmos, the tone is a little weird, but I'd say what I'd pin it down most to is that it's critical. It's both has both negative and positive kind of connotations to it, mainly because he's talking a lot about kind of accepting people in and letting things like that happen, but at the same time he's also warning people about the dangers that industrialization can bring.
Yeah, he's very aware of the pros and cons. He's not just agreeing with it to roll with it. He's kind of, I see the pros and the cons. Hopefully the pros happen.
I Hear America Singing has a lot of Tory tone, like very happy and passionate tone, because once again it's pretty much just descriptive of how he views the working class.
Yeah, I was also praising how he thought that we should be running, and how America should be running with the working class working hard and helping everyone. And Come Set My Soul, Tone was very complacent. He wasn't upset about being near death. He wasn't upset about being old or upset about anything. He wasn't fighting anything. He wasn't happy. He was just going with the waves, just flowing. He wasn't trying to fight.
It was very kind of final.
Yeah.
In kind of how he thought about it. And he was, because not a lot of people are just ready for that. You know, that's a pretty intense thing.
Yeah.
So it definitely goes to show like his kind of belief in life and like with his more kind of religious beliefs, that it definitely fits with kind of how he's been growing as a person over time.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, this is a summary of Walt Whitman and his entire life. He's most notably known for his Leaves of Grass and how he continued to publish new editions throughout his entire life. The Civil War, when he was not a soldier in the Civil War. He was not a medic either. He was someone who helped with the soldiers when they were wounded on both sides, the Confederates and the Union. He brought like candies and papers and all kinds of goodies to the soldiers, and he helped raise awareness for these soldiers, and he got other businesses and other government departments to donate such items to the soldiers to make because they're fighting for us. They're fighting for America and for the people and what they believed in. So he believed that they should be taken well care of. And also another poem that we didn't talk about, but very, very famous poem of him was Captain O Captain. He wrote this after Abe Lincoln was assassinated. It's a very somber poem. He's very upset about the leader being killed. And later on in his life, he did suffer a stroke. He survived it though. And then he moved on to Camden, New Jersey, where he continued to post new editions of Leaves of Grass, and he continued with his free verse ideas and became the father of free verse. Walt Whitman died on March 26, 1892 in Camden, New Jersey due to pleurisy, which is an infection in the lungs which causes inflammation of lung tissues in the chest cavity.